Tonight's invocation will be given by Ms. Carrillo, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Ms. Mozayev.
Dear Lord, we thank you for the ability to come before you with this commission. We invite you to be here with us this evening and to grant us wisdom with each case and situation that is presented before us tonight. In your name, we pray.
If we may all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioners, please announce any item you are recusing from due to conflict of interest prior to the item being heard. Secretary, will you please call the roll call of the Planning Commission?
Commissioner Boado,
Present.
Commissioner Monroy.
Present.
Commissioner Preciado,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Barrera,
Present.
Chairperson Ramirez.
Present. We will now begin with item number 5.1 on the agenda. At this time, I will open the public hearing at 5:20. May we have a staff report, please, Ms. Mozayev?
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, staff, and public. For the record, my name is Mona Mosayeb, Acting City Planner with the Bell Gardens Planning Division, and this presentation is to discuss the Conditional Use Permit and Development Agreement 2024-015 as it relates to the City and Department of Cannabis Control storefront retail license request at 6300 Gage Avenue. If you recall, this item was continued from February 19th, where you provided staff with some direction, and I will detail them in my presentation. It is staff's recommendation that the Planning Commission 1. Adopt resolution number PC 2025-09 denying conditional use permit number 2024-015 to permit a cannabis retail use and associated tenant improvements to an existing 2,575 square foot commercial building located at 6300 Gage Avenue, or determine that conditional use permit number 2024-015 and ordinance number 953 for development agreement number 2024-015 are categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to state CEQA guidelines section 15061B3 common sense exemption and section 15301 existing facilities, and 2, adopt resolution number PC 2025-04 approving conditional use permit 2024-015 to authorize a cannabis retail use storefront and tenant improvements to a 1,512 square foot suite in an existing 2,572 square foot commercial building, and to authorize, subject to conditions of approval, located at 6300 Gage Avenue. And thirdly, adopt resolution number PC 2025-05 recommending to the City Council adopt an ordinance authorizing the City of Bell Gardens to enter into and execute a development agreement by and between the City, Bell Gardens ZG Associates LLC, and the Rodriguez Family Trust to permit a cannabis use for a 5-year term with the option to extend the DA for an additional 5 years for a total of 10-year term in exchange for public benefits. The applicant is requesting the approval of a conditional use permit to allow a cannabis retail use and proposed tenant improvements to an approximately 1,512 square foot commercial suite of an existing approximately 2,572 square foot commercial building. On February 19th, 2025, the Planning Commission held a duly noticed public hearing and reviewed all facts and evidence, both written and verbal, pertaining to conditional use permit number 2024-15. After receiving public testimony and closing the public hearing, the Planning Commission deliberated and determined that the project does not meet the required findings pursuant to Bell Gardens Municipal Code Section 9.50.050. The Planning Commission expressed concerns about the location of the proposed cannabis retail storefront, indicating the location of the subject site on Gage Avenue is adjacent to residential uses in close proximity to Cesar Chavez Elementary School and Bell Gardens High School, and the path of travel for many students. Gage Avenue is subject to high levels of heavy foot traffic from students and families walking to and from nearby schools, exposing minor children to cannabis. Additionally, the Commission indicated the operation of a cannabis retail storefront in an area regularly frequented by children attending nearby schools would increase minors' exposure and the ability to access cannabis, to the deterrent of the public health, safety, and general welfare. The site is located at 6300 Gage Avenue. It is zoned mixed use and has a land use designation of mixed use. The subject site is 11,410 square feet. City of Commerce is to the north, R3 heavy density residential zone to the west, and open space zone to the east and south. As shown in the 1,500-foot radius map, the subject site is highlighted in green and at the center of the map, while Bell Gardens High School and Cesar Chavez Elementary School are both highlighted in red. Bell Gardens Municipal Code Section 9.20.160A3 prohibits a cannabis retail use to be located within a 600-foot radius of a daycare center, youth center, school, or park as defined in Chapter 9.04 of the Bell Gardens Municipal Code. That is existing at the time of an application for a conditional use permit is submitted. In addition, Bell Gardens Municipal Code Section 9.20C2 requires applicants to submit a 1,500-foot radius map that indicates all cannabis retailers, daycare centers, youth centers, and schools existing within that radius of the subject site to better understand the surrounding context for the proposed use. Although the subject site satisfies the 600-foot distancing requirement of daycare centers, youth centers, schools, and parks, and 500-foot distancing requirement from any other cannabis use, the Planning Commission is concerned over 2 public schools that exist within a 1,500-foot radius of the subject site. Although not located within the prohibited 600-foot radius, Cesar Chavez Elementary School and Bell Gardens High School are located within the 1,500-foot documentation radius. Specifically, Bell Gardens High School is approximately 897 square feet away, and Cesar Chavez Elementary School is approximately 800 feet away. The Planning Commission expressed concerns about the number of minors passing by the site on a daily basis and the exposure that minors would have to cannabis on an everyday basis. Chapter 5.64 of the Bell Gardens Municipal Code requires a cannabis retailer to comply with specific operating standards. The applicant would be required to implement and comply with a security plan to provide safe, secure surroundings for both customers and the surrounding neighborhood. During the public hearing at the February 19th, 2025 meeting, the Planning Commission indicated that the applicant's security plan does not adequately address all security threats and concerns, including but not limited to how the security personnel would manage students loitering near the applicant's storefront and parking lot. Additionally, the Planning Commission expressed concern regarding the lack of security measures during nighttime hours. The security plan identifies one security guard during operating hours, but does not identify on-site security to guard the store after hours, which would increase the risk of theft and other criminal activity and thereby creating a public nuisance. Bell Gardens Municipal Code Section 9.50.050 permits the Planning Commission to approve a CUP for cannabis retail use only if the Planning Commission can make the following findings of facts. However, pursuant to the Planning Commission's CUP findings, the proposed use does not comply with the findings that requires a use to not jeopardize, adversely affect, endanger, or otherwise constitute a nuisance to the public health, safety, and general welfare. Pursuant to the Planning Commission CUP findings, the proposed use will jeopardize, adversely affect, endanger, or otherwise constitute a nuisance to the public health, safety, or general welfare. The location of the subject site on Gage Avenue is adjacent to residential uses and experiences heavy foot traffic from students, exposing minors to cannabis. The operation of a cannabis retail store in an area regularly frequented by children attending nearby schools would increase minors' exposure to and the ability to access cannabis, to the detriment of public health, safety, and general welfare. The applicant is requesting the city to enter into and execute a development agreement by and between the city, Bell Gardens ZG Associates LLC, and the Rodriguez Family Trust to permit a cannabis use for a 5-year term with the option to extend the DA for an additional 5-year term for a total of 10 years in exchange for public benefits. In accordance with legal procedures, the absence of of an approved entitlement such as a CUP means there is no development right to be vested in the development agreement. Therefore, without an approved CUP, the development agreement cannot be executed. It is staff's recommendation that the Planning Commission, 1, adopt Resolution PC 2025-09, denying conditional use permit number 2024-015 to permit a cannabis retail use and associated tenant improvements to an existing 2,575 square foot commercial building located at 6300 Gage, or determine that the conditional use permit number 2024-015 and ordinance number 953 for development agreement number 2024-015 are categorically exempt from CEQA pursuant the state CEQA guidelines, section 15061B3, common sense exemption, and section 15301, existing facilities, and adopt resolution number PC 2025-04, approving conditional use permit 2024-015 to authorize a cannabis retail use storefront and tenant improvements to a 1,512 square foot suite in an existing 2,572 square foot commercial building, and to authorize subject to conditions of approval located at 6300 Gage Avenue, and adopt resolution number PC 2025-05, recommending to the City Council to adopt an ordinance authorizing the City of Bell Gardens to enter into and execute a development agreement by and between the City, Bell Gardens ZG Associates LLC, and the Rodriguez Family Trust to permit a cannabis use for a 5-year term with the option to extend the DA for an additional 5 years for a total of 10-year term in exchange for public benefits. The applicant, I believe, is present this evening. Can we confirm? Okay, so the applicant is not present this evening, but staff, city attorney are open to questions. Thank you.
At this time, if the applicant would like to come to the podium to address the planning commission, they may do so.
para que solicite hacia adelante al podio para para dirigirse a la comisión.
We're online.
Okay, the
Estamos en
applicant is
línea.
online.
Ok, están en la línea. No, just don't keep
Yes, if the applicant
going for a second.
would like to speak, you have a 10-minute time frame. You can speak now.
Yes.
You
You guys,
please state your name.
my name is Alejandro Calleres, CEO of CG Gardens. Good evening, Commissioner and staff. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to return and address the concerns that have been raised regarding our proposed cannabis dispensary at 6300 Gage. We understand the responsibility that comes with operating in this community, and we have listened carefully to the feedback from both the planning staff and the community members. Tonight, we want to present key modifications to our proposal that directly address these concerns, reinforcing our commitment to being positive force in the neighborhood. So our operational adjustments, one of our primary concerns that was raised in our last meeting was the potential for our business to operate during times when children are traveling to and from school. In response to this, we are officially modifying our hours to open operation at 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. This ensures that our dispensary will not be open during the morning hours when children are traveling to school. Additionally, we will add an extra security guard for 2 hours in the afternoon when students are leaving school. This added measure will provide an extra layer of security and reassurance for parents and community members to ensure that there is no loitering at that time. And we will also add a security overnight, 24-hour surveillance. Our goal is not just to comply with regulation, but to proactively in ensuring the safety and comfort of the neighborhood. With that said, we also had the time to be around the community these past couple of weeks, and we're going to add some community investments and local benefits. Beyond compliance and safety, we are committed to giving back to the community in meaningful ways. We recognize that a strong, thriving community benefits everyone. We are proud to introduce initiatives that directly support local youth and families. We have decided to be part of a scholarship program. We are funding scholarship for graduating seniors in the community. In addition to our primary scholarship, each commissioner will have the opportunity to personally select a deserving student, ensuring that multiple students benefit each year. Also, we'll support local sports teams. We have identified soccer teams and clubs in need of uniforms and funding. These teams consist of children from the community, and we are committed to providing assistance, just as we do in one of our locations in Calexico, California. Also, we are notified that there's a pool that will be opening soon. So we also will be offering a donation for free swimming lessons with local pool reopening for the first time years. We want to ensure children have access to essential water safety education. We will fully fund swimming lessons for children during every available season. These initiatives reflect our long-term commitment to well-being of the community. We are not just opening business, we are investing in the future of the neighborhood and the youth. Thank you for your time, commissioners, and hopefully you guys can come to a decision that will help us be in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Paloma McAvoy with the City Attorney's Office. I just wanted to make a point of clarification from the applicant as it relates to the added, I believe he said security measures during after school hours. What hours, exactly what that measure was? You're on mute, sir.
That will be from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m.
And there would be an extra, so you would have 2 security guards on site?
Correct, on the outside.
And you're proposing hours of 10 a.m. to 9 p.m.?
Of business, yes.
Okay. One of did you add security for after hours as well?
Yes, sir.
Would that be so is that a 24-hour?
That'll be 24-hour surveillance and security guard.
Okay. Yeah, commissioners, please, if you have any questions for our attendant here.
I do have a question. I, however, don't know whether this would be for active city planner Mona or the applicant itself, but I did read over some of the attachments and one of them mentioned CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. What are those measures? What does that look like?
You're talking to us? Or is that the city council? I mean, I'm sorry, the city planning commission.
No, sir, that would be for you. They're asking for you to describe the measures that you will be utilizing, sir.
So to prevent, as far as our security measures, which was what we discussed. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Sure, I saw that in one of the attachments. I believe it was in fact for the security prevention item. Well, I'm sorry, attachment. There was a element that stated that there would be crime prevention through environmental design. I was just wondering what that meant. What are those measures?
Oh, so pretty much that means like graffiti and anything on the outside. We obviously going to beautify the building. Right now, it's a current abandoned building, and it does look like there's a lot of homeless there. I passed through there a couple of times, and there's homeless hanging around there. So by us being there, we're gonna obviously stop that. We won't have any current homeless that are loitering at the moment, and that abandoned building will be beautified. And also, we will pretty much take care of it 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in here. This is Corey Travis. I'm COO of Zen Garden as well. And Alex pretty much said it perfectly there. The building's getting a major overhaul. We've worked with our security consultant to ensure that there's appropriate lighting throughout the day, not just to illuminate the building and the surrounding areas, but also to make sure that there aren't bushes or overhanging canopies or areas where someone might conceal themselves. From a security perspective. So in addition to bringing more light to the area and having those active security patrols, we're also creating a design that is going to be conducive towards not having any hideouts for loitering or people that might be hanging on the premises that don't have a business being there.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. This might be directed more towards staff. From all the new measures that Mr. Calleros mentioned, do those have to be placed onto the CUP before it is approved?
Thank you, Commissioner Barrera. Paloma McAvoy with the City Attorney's Office. It's a very good question. So there are, if I'm reading this at 1, 2, there are 2 measures that would need to be implemented within the conditions of approval. One thing that we do not have, however, is some proposed updates to the security plan. The security plan is also incorporated into the conditions of approval and the development agreement. So we would need a revised security plan in order to be able to incorporate them into the document so that we could forward them on to the City Council. And then in addition, the applicant has suggested a scholarship program to the City Council's choosing in terms of what scholarships, although I would need some specificity as to the amounts that the applicant is willing to contribute, as well as sports teams. We would need some specificity about the sports teams and the groups, as well as the donation regarding swimming lessons and programming at the incoming aquatic center. Those provisions would be incorporated within the terms of the development agreement, and I can do that. However, we would need those items from the applicant in order to move forward with the city council if this planning commission wanted to move forward with this project.
Okay, so we would still be able to approve it, but then before it gets to the council, it would.
Unfortunately, given the substantive changes, especially with the security plan and the provisions that would be incorporated into the development agreement, I don't have that specificity. Unless the applicant is able to provide it to us tonight, we could try to amend this on the record tonight. I could definitely amend the conditions of approval. But again, part of the conditions of approval require the applicant to abide by the security plan. So that would be the one piece that's missing from there. The rest of the provisions regarding donations and community benefits would all be incorporated into the development agreement.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I guess the next question would be, how could we move forward with this now?
So you have a few options. You can deny the project. You could approve the project as you see it today, or you could approve the project or direct staff to incorporate these provisions within the CUP and the development agreement and bring it back at a future meeting.
That would be direction to staff. That would not be an action then.
Correct.
So it would have to come back. Because what I'm hearing is that the items that the applicant is mentioning, they're just too vague. They need to be written down.
Yeah, great question. Clarification as to how they plan on implementing that and how they plan to sponsor the youth groups, as well as making sure that, I believe some other applicants have stated in the past that they like how do we know that you're not gonna get a jersey with a patch with and it has a logo that's maybe we don't want on their jersey because it's where it's coming from. That type of clarification, I feel like we have to have it in writing, right? And I'm not sure if the commissioners have they addressed all the concerns that we brought up last meeting. I'd like to hear from each one of you if possible.
Yeah, for me, it's the security measures, obviously, so they're brought up, but I do want to see them in writing myself. More exactly as far as what extent, how's that going to work, especially when students are there. They did state as far as the time frame, right? They're going to open later for that morning traffic for students. Afternoon, have 2 security guards, but I kind of want to know a little bit more about that and have it stated.
And just a point of clarification, the original CUP recommended hours of operation from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So we're just shortening the hours by 1 hour. Yeah. I would also recommend, consistent with the other applicants that have been approved, all delivery vehicles need to return to the facilities. The last delivery cannot go out later than 1 hour prior to closing, and all vehicles have to be back by closing time.
Right, thank you. I did see that the hours were pushed back. I believe that one of the concerns were regarding when the students left school, right? Them walking back home if they were walking. And I believe that the applicant stated that they're gonna have a extra security guard during those hours, right? From 1 to 5, if I'm not mistaken.
1 to 5 too. That's what I got from the conversation.
Okay. Do you feel that's adequate security for those hours?
I do feel that too, especially during that time. Yes. And 24/7 security.
Yeah,
as well.
I agree. Commissioners, any other comments or questions?
Is there a deadline for the applicant to provide these kinds of provisions?
We would need some specificity before you provide us that direction tonight so that we could incorporate those changes into into the materials before the next planning commission meeting. Most of this can be done with language, but I would need some specificity from the applicant in terms of the amounts. And we typically do ask for these types of community benefits upon building permit, and if whether or not the applicant would be agreeable to providing these community benefits upon the building permit, and then the sports teams and that they would be contributing to, as well as the swimming lessons at the aquatic center.
So suppose this planning commission were to approve this business to go forward and operating, the applicant would provide all of that he talked about by tonight.
We need those specifics tonight so that I can get that direction from you all to be able to incorporate that into the documents. Yeah. And then I incorporate it, make the revisions that you direct me to make, and then we come back in 1 month at the next planning commission meeting.
All right, thank you.
I do have a question for Mr. Travis, as far as have you done like scholarships before for basically the other locations you're at? Have you established scholarships for the surrounding cities or schools? And also as far as sports teams, as far as how does that look like in other communities that you guys are involved with? Is there a patch with the name or?
No, that's a great question. So as far as the scholarship, we have not done that in the past. Every community that we operate has different needs. And so we really try to, do what the community is asking for. So this would be a first here. We have done sports teams and we have supported school programs in the past. And really, it's just, this is not a marketing opportunity for us. We're not trying to attract customers. We're not trying to indoctrinate children. We don't want to expose them to the products that we have. So, I mean, really, it's a blind donation. We want the schools to have more money for their programs. We want the sports teams to have better uniforms. But no, that we would leave that at the discretion of the folks who are actually running those programs.
Thank you very much.
I had one more question regarding the community benefits. All of these new initiatives mentioned tonight are in addition to the annual community benefit, correct?
Yeah, these are, we went back to after hearing some of the feedback from the Planning Commission from our last meeting, we went back to our team and are proposing these in addition to the community benefits we previously discussed, yes.
Is all? Any more questions?
Mr. Travis, in stating that you don't want to attract customers, what is it about the 6300 Gage Avenue location that makes it strategic for the business itself?
Well, look, I mean, it's a great question. I think, when you look at Bell Gardens as a city as a whole, it's a dynamic city. You've got lots of schools. You have interspersed throughout the area. You have residential. You don't have big pockets of industrial sectors and residential sectors and commercial sectors. So, we really view when we're looking at a location is we want the customers that are trying to get there to not have to go out of their way because they may be working, they may be busy doing other things. So being on an area that's well served by police and fire and other city services, as well as being on a commercial corridor, is something that we look for. And everything else beyond that is really just something that we do to serve those customers. Again, not necessarily attracting folks that aren't already aware of what cannabis is and are looking for that kind of a facility. We don't put pot leaves out in the window. We don't have big deal signs that go on front. It's very nondescript, and we use alternative marketing channels that are geared towards people that are 21 and up. Beyond that, and I know that there was some discussion as to who can access a facility with the commission last time, with folks asking if it's 21 and up, it's adult use, and if it's 18 and up, they're allowed to be a customer if they have a medical recommendation. But again, that's just the state regulations. At the end of the day, we as a business have the discretion to serve or not serve certain clientele if we think that there's abuse or otherwise. I mean, just like someone can go into a liquor store and buy a bunch of booze for people across the way, we look for these kinds of things when we're running the business, because we know for a long-term partnership here in the community, selling to people that are just getting their card and maybe are abusing the system are not the type of customers that we want to serve. So I just want you as a commission to understand that this is a long-term endeavor for us, not a short-term deal, and we don't make shortcuts when it comes to trying to get a little bit of extra revenue. It's not worth it.
And just for the planning commission's benefit, the requirement to not allow outside advertising on the glass and on the public right of way, that is a typical condition that's imposed with every cannabis retailer within the city. And I forgot what the second point that the applicant made. The age restrictions, those are also conditions that are imposed by the state, and we also put into our conditions of approval, so that's consistent as well.
So if there's no other questions? Okay. The item has continued from February 19, 2025, Planning Commission meeting. We will now reopen the public comments for this item. Secretary, please announce the instructions for public participation.
The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on the public hearing item number 5.1. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the Planning Commission. Each speaker entering comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on the Zoom and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from the members of the public that are physically present in the council chamber. If you haven't done so already, please submit all comment cards now. Chairperson, it looks like there is no one in the council chambers that wants to speak on this item. I will go ahead and see if there is anyone on the chat line that would like to speak on this item. If there is anyone on the chat line, go ahead and press *6 to unmute yourself if you would like to speak on this item. Chairperson, it looks like we do not have anyone on the chat line who wants to speak on this item, and for the record, no written comments were submitted.
If there are no objections by the Planning Commission, I will close public participation. If there are no additional questions or comments by the Planning Commission, I will close the public hearing at 5:56 p.m. May I have a motion to move forward with staff's recommendations as noted in action item number 1 or staff report? Commissioners, yeah, would you, any of you guys like to motion?
Yeah,
anything?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to motion to bring back item next planning commission meeting for staff to bring back conditional use permit 2024-015 with the updated measures mentioned during today's meeting and the specifics.
Just for everybody's benefit, if the applicant could give us those details that I asked for earlier, specifically the amount of the scholarship funds that would be donated and what sports teams have been identified, as well as the donation to the aquatic center and the amount.
Hold on. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so for the sports teams, we pretty much gonna put it out there to the coaches, and the coaches will let us know which ones they need. And our budget for that, it will be $8,000 for that. So we will help out as many coaches as we have the budget for that year. And
Do you
for
have identified sports teams?
Not, we talked to a couple of the coaches and we told them we gave them our information and they will call us and let us know when it starts. So in order we could start the program once we, but at the moment, no, we don't have a direct team yet. We just identify the coaches. That said, they will be part of the program once we start.
Would it be possible to allocate those $8,000? And I mean, the team has to be selected by you, or is it just
It's
by the city and
by
the
the,
soccer
by the city and anyone on the sports committee or coaches that the city also brings up to us, we would allow it.
And then just another point of clarification, is this a one-time donation or would this be an annual donation?
This will be the annual.
If I may suggest to the planning commission, if you don't have a team currently selected, one way that you could possibly amend the development agreement is to have the annual $8,000 community benefit to go directly to your Rec and Parks Department, where it could go specifically to youth programming.
Right, and then regarding the aquatic program, our aquatic center is not open yet, you know, how would that work as well?
It would be similar. We would have to set up anytime funds are earmarked for special purposes, such as sports teams or for the aquatic center, by law, we have to put them in a separate account. So they could be earmarked. That will be noted in the ordinance. And then when the money is deposited, it would be in a separate account that could be used for that purpose specifically. And I would pose the same questions to the applicant, and the amount, and then how often, if it would be a one-time contribution or if it would be an ongoing contribution.
So for the aquatic center, we our budget is $6,000 a year. And yeah, if it'll go to Parks and Recreation.
And then the same question for the scholarship program.
Yeah, that question and clarification as to it goes without, I thought it goes without saying, but I'd like to get on the record that the aquatic program and donation would go towards funding for lessons at our center, not any other center, right?
Correct. And if it helps the planning commission, if for some reason the aquatic center is not giving out lessons, we can add in language that it could be used for some sort of programming at the aquatic center. Although I have a feeling there'll be lessons.
Right, and then the scholarship clarification as well, please.
So for the scholarship, 25,000 a year, every graduating season, and it's up to the commission to select the students.
Just a point of clarification, I think earlier you had mentioned that the city council would be selecting a group that the scholarships would go to, or would each city council person be awarding a $5,000 scholarship?
You guys can disperse it into different students, but it could be the planning commission or the city council. It's up to the city how you guys would like to do that. But since
I think that that doesn't sound very I don't know. I wouldn't want to be dictating that. I think maybe if we can add something in writing where the high school or can determine who that is in a manner that's fair, right, versus an arbitrary commissioner or city council member.
I was just going to mention with that, because we're part of the education commission as well, right? So they have scholarships. So I don't know if they could be earmarked that way and just dictated how we already have a program with scholarships, right? Just to make it easy.
Yes, correct. So, yeah, we can definitely, I think if the city already has an ongoing scholarship program, we could dedicate those funds directly to that scholarship program.
With that, can you add clarification as to how those funds are allocated? Would it just be more funds to those specific chosen students, or would that be 25,000 to fund the education of more students.
Well, that's something now that we're discussing and start coming up with a system, but to me, it just seems kind of what you're mentioning. Like, I don't feel comfortable making those decisions as far as how that's gonna be run. I'm okay with the city council or maybe the schools themselves or however.
Right. School themselves, probably sounds a little better now.
Right.
Are those amounts guaranteed or will they fluctuate? Depending on how good the business is.
No, those amounts will be guaranteed yearly.
And Paloma McAvoy with City Attorney's Office, just to kind of illustrate the way a development agreement works. These terms would be in the development agreement. If for some reason the applicant does not abide by the terms of the development agreement, they will get a notice of violation from the city, in which they have, I believe it's 30 days to correct that violation. If they don't correct that violation, the city then could start taking moves towards terminating the agreement. And that process would be very similar to the process you have now. If they don't cure, there would be basically, there's an ordinance to create a development agreement. You undo a development agreement through an ordinance as well. So we would be back here before you, let you know all the different ways in which the applicant is not complying with the terms of the development agreement. And then it would be up to you to terminate that development agreement.
Thank you.
And I just want to confirm the amounts, right? So 25,000 for scholarships, 8,000 for sports teams, and 6,000 would be for the aquatic center for swimming lessons.
Yes, and all on an annual basis, and the initial amounts due upon building permit.
Okay.
I know that we don't have like a pricing menu of, oh, what does that mean? Like how many students, how many people get to learn how to swim, how many lessons, what is that? When it comes to these funds, right? If they're from this pot for the chosen student, are those like discounted lessons or are they like full pot price? How does that work?
That's really going to be up to the discretion of the Rec and Parks Department. Right now, you don't have an aquatic center. I'm not sure at this point how the programming will look. You could write something into the development agreement that says that the funding will be used to fully subsidize swim lessons, or you could say they will somehow subsidize swim lessons. Perhaps it's, half the price, or, to kind of spread the wealth, or it could be the full amount to be able to help out those families who might otherwise struggle to be able to afford those classes.
Okay, thank you. Were those the 3 items, or were there more items? I mean, he spoke about a lot of things.
Yeah,
such security and all these other things. So I just
Well, it was
wanna
the
make sure
3
that-
items, right? And then obviously the security is still pending, that they might provide that information maybe today.
I would need a revised security plan in
Yeah.
order to move forward. Otherwise, we'd be changing everything what they call post hoc, which is not permitted. So unfortunately tonight, unless we get those data points, we would have to move forward with the current security plan, which I understand is not to the planning commission's liking. However, if we get a revised security plan that does incorporate these suggestions that the applicant made, we can have those revisions ready for you by the next planning commission, because I'm also going to have to substantially revise the development agreement
Correct.
as well. I can do conditions of approval on the fly here before you all, but these are pretty substantive amendments.
Agree.
Do we have to repeat the commissioner?
You may repeat it, but we have a motion on the floor.
Right. Can I get a second for what was it? It's for the staff to come back with the item, correct? Can I get a second, please?
I second that.
And for the record, the direction would be to direct staff to revise the conditions of approval from operating hours from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. with the last delivery vehicle leaving at 8 p.m. to return by 9 p.m. to revise the security plan, to add a security guard overnight for 24/7 security, as well as an additional security guard between the hours of 1 and 5 PM, Monday through Friday. And for the development agreement to be revised to provide $25,000 in scholarship funds. I'm not sure, is that going to the city?
That hasn't been established, but
Where does it go for the scholarships that you're involved with?
well, this was back in the Education Commission, but the city would run that basically. And Parks and Recs, if I'm not mistaken. It almost seems like everything would go through Parks and Recs now.
Yeah. And then $8,000 for the sports teams on an annual basis, first payment due upon building permit, and then a $6,000 annual contribution for the aquatic center, swim lesson programming, first payment due upon building permit, and then renewed on an annual basis.
Yeah, because I think like at least the 8,000, 6,000, we know that's Park and Rec right there. It's a scholarship that, where would that go? I don't know if anyone,
Does staff know if the city has already something in place for scholarships that we could just, add it to those funds?
Planning Division does not have that information, but if this item is being continued as what I'm hearing, it is something that we will determine and we will confer with Recreation and Community Services. It very well may be something that Community Services facilitates, but I don't have confirmation for you this evening.
Yeah, excuse me if I may, John Ramirez, the interim community development director. It looks like the existing Education Commission is involved in, to your point, looking at opportunities for students in the community for affordable grants and learning opportunities. So they make recommendations to the city council, and through that, similar to how you make recommendations to city council on certain actions. And from there, the final decisions are made for grants and different types of educational opportunities to the community through the city council. So that might be the appropriate mechanism where either scholarships can be provided to Bell Gardens high school students as they're moving into college, or if there's special programs or needs at the local level for either it could be TK preschool or grade school. The Education Commission could have an additional resource to make recommendations to the city council for the use of those funds. That might be the appropriate body to maneuver.
yeah, that makes sense. Like I said, I was in the Education Commission before, right? And that's exactly what we did. And I don't know what's active now, right? I know there was a scholarship for high school students, and then there was also a Cesar Chavez scholarship they did for elementary students as well. So that makes sense just to go through them.
Mhm.
If everybody's okay with that.
If I may, Chair, Lloyd Pilchin. So I think that to use the director's word, the mechanism, let's let staff work on that. The important thing is that the applicant is stating that he's going to write checks. And then, so the dollar amount is what's important to specify now. That's what staff will come back with conditions of approval that describe those dollar amounts that he's offering. The mechanism about exactly which department and how it's done, let's let staff work that out.
Thank you very much. Planning Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Commissioner Boado,
Yes.
Commissioner Monroy,
Yes.
Commissioner Preciado,
Can I ask for some clarification on what the measure is again? Motion?
The motion was to direct staff to revise the conditions of approval and development agreement to reflect the additional community benefits and changes to the hours of operation and security plan.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barrera,
Yes.
Chairperson Ramirez.
Yes. We will not-
Motion passes.
We will now begin with item number 5.2 on the agenda. At this time, I will open public hearing at 6:13 PM. May we have the staff report, please, Ms. Moseyev?
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, staff, and public. For the record, my name is Mona Mosayed, Acting City Planner for the Bell Gardens Community Development Department Planning Division. And this presentation is to introduce Zoning Code Amendment Number 2024-075, Accessory Dwelling Unit Provision Update. It is a recommendation that the Planning Commission find the proposed ordinance number 954 statutorily exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act and adopt resolution number PC 2025-06 recommending to the City Council approval of zoning code amendment number 2024-075 and adoption of ordinance number 954 amending the Bell Gardens Municipal Code to regulate accessory dwelling units. In California Government State Code, Section 66310, the state legislature found and declared that, among other things, allowing ADUs in zones that allow single-family and multifamily uses provides additional rental housing and is an essential component in addressing California's housing needs. Over the years, state ADU laws have been revised to improve its effectiveness at creating more housing. Recent legislature has outdated certain portions of the Bell Gardens Municipal Code, Title IX, Zoning and Planning Regulations, or the Zoning Code. On March 26, 2024, the California governor signed Senate Bill 477 to make state law governing ADUs and JADUs, that's known as junior ADUs, easier to read and navigate. Senate Bill 477 clarified the law through non-substantive changes that relocated numerous simplified government code sections into a new chapter within smaller sections. On September 19th, 2024, the California governor signed SB 1211, which clarified the definition of livable space, prohibited replacement requirements for certain parking spaces, and increased the quantity of detached ADUs allowed for lots with existing or proposed multifamily dwelling units. The city must comply with new state ADU and JADU law implemented under SB 477 and SB 1211. Ordinance number 954 proposes to amend the Bell Gardens Municipal Code Section 9.20.036, accessory dwelling units, to align with the state's new legal framework concerning local regulations of ADUs. Definitions. Ordinance number 954 proposes definitions for livable space. The proposed term would define what constitutes a livable space as outlined in the ADU development standards. Additionally, the definition of public transit is being updated to specify which forms of transit are recognized as public. The purpose of ordinance number 954 would amend the Bell Gardens Municipal Code to facilitate the streamlined review of ADU developments. The ordinance proposes to amend the city's ADU provisions to align with the state's simplified and reorganized references and language with regard to application processing, ADU density, clarified definitions, and ADU sales. The ordinance will amend the allowable detached ADU density for properties with multifamily structures from 2 detached ADUs to up to 8 detached ADUs, or the number of standard dwelling units, whichever is less. Ordinance number 954 is consistent with the general plan's housing element programs number 11 and 13. The general plan's housing element program 11 highlights the city's recognition of the state's commitment to promote the development of ADUs with a qualified objective of facilitating ADU construction. Adoption of ordinance number 954 would align the city's ADU provisions and regulations with recently updated state guidelines to encourage ADU development while allowing local agencies to establish their own standards in keeping with applicable California government code and would be in accordance with Program 11. The general plan's Housing Element Program 13 identifies that the city will evaluate development standards and procedures to ensure compliance with the state laws. Ordinance number 954 would revise ADU provisions to ensure alignment with the state's laws and guidelines. The proposed zoning code amendment would introduce an ordinance to comply with recently adopted Senate bills that promote the development of ADU projects. As such, this approach would follow the intent of Program 13. Ordinance number 954 is consistent with the general plan's land use element policy 2. The general plan's land use element policy 2 emphasizes the city's commitment to promote compatible residential development and ensure safe housing. Ordinance number 954 would support ADU development in zones designated for residential use. The updated ADU standards would maintain alignment with existing residential standards, ensuring that ADUs remain compatible with traditional dwelling units to support policy 2. It is staff's recommendation that the Planning Commission conduct the public hearing and receive testimony, find the proposed ordinance number 954 statutorily exempt from the provisions of the California Environmental Quality Act, and adopt resolution number PC 2025-01 recommending to the City Council approval of zoning code amendment number 2024-075 and the adoption of ordinance number 954, amending the Bell Gardens Municipal Code to regulate accessory dwelling units. Thank you, and this concludes planning's presentation. Staff and city attorney are available for questions.
Thank you very much. And we will now move the commissioners' questions and comments. Does any commissioner have any questions or comments? Seeing as we don't have many questions or comments at this time, we'll now open the public comments for this item. Secretary, please announce the instructions for public participation.
The members of the public will now have the opportunity to speak on the public hearing item number 5.2. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the Planning Commission. Each speaker and written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on the Zoom and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from the members of the public that are physically present in the council chambers. If you haven't done so already, please submit all comment cards now. Chairperson, it looks like there is no one in the council chambers that wants to speak on this item. I will go ahead and see if there is anyone on the chat line that would like to speak on this item. If there is anyone on the chat line, go ahead and press *6 to unmute yourself if you would like to speak on this item. Chairperson, it looks like we do not have anyone on the chat line who wants to speak on this item, and for the record, no written comments were submitted.
If there are no objections by the Planning Commission, I will close public participation. If there are no additional questions or comments by the Planning Commission, I will close the public hearing at 6:22 p.m. May I have a motion to approve staff's recommendations as noted in the staff report and presentation?
Yes. Sorry, what would we be motioning on? What would the motion be?
It would be to adopt the recommendations from staff on the planning commission to adopt resolution PC. In this case, can we just say to adopt?
Yeah, if I may,
Staff recommendation.
you don't have to read it all. It can just be motion to approve staff's recommendation. That's it.
I'd like to motion to approve staff's recommendation.
May I have a second?
I second that motion.
Planning Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Commissioner Boado,
Yes.
Commissioner Monroy,
Yes.
Commissioner Preciado,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barrera,
Yes.
Chairperson Ramirez,
Yes.
motion passes.
Public comment is now open for items listed on the planning commission agenda. Secretary, please announce the instructions for public participation.
The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on agenda items. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the Planning Commission. Each speaker and written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on the Zoom and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from the members of the public that are physically present in the council chambers. If you haven't done so already, please submit all comment cards now. Chairperson, it looks like there is no one in the council chambers that wants to speak on agenda item. I will go ahead and see if there's anyone on the chat line that would like to speak on agenda items. If there is anyone on the chat line, go ahead and press *6 to unmute yourself if you would like to speak on agenda items. Chairperson, it looks like we do not have anyone on the chat line who wants to speak on agenda items, and for the record, no written comments were submitted.
If there's no objection by the planning commission, I will close public participation for agendized items. I will now move to the consent calendar. Does any member of the planning commission wish to pull an item for separate discussion?
Well, in this case, it's just one, we've only got one consent, right, which is the minutes, approving the minutes. So there's really no need to pull or not pull. It's just a question if anyone has any, does anyone want to have any discussion on that one item? And then if not, you could just proceed with approving the consent.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion to approve motion item number 7.1. May I have a second?
Second that.
Finance Secretary, will you please conduct roll call vote?
Commissioner Boado,
Yes.
Commissioner Monroy,
Yes.
Commissioner Preciado,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barrera,
Yes.
Chairperson Ramirez.
Yes.
Motion passes.
We will now move to item number 8.1, report on the climate action plan preparation status. May we have the report, the staff report, please, Ms. Morelia?
Good evening. Chair, Commissioners, fellow staff, and public. For the record, my name is Mona Mosayeb, Acting City Planner for the Bell Gardens Community Development Department Planning Division. And this discussion item is to go over the Bell Gardens Climate Action Plan. It is recommended that the Planning Commission receive and file the staff report provided herein. A brief background before I introduce the consultants and discussion. On December 11th, 2023, City Council adopted a resolution authorizing acceptance of the California Department of Transportation, Caltrans, Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Funding in the amount of $211,175 towards the Bell Gardens Climate Action Plan, also referred to as CAP, to align with the Caltrans goals to identify and address transportation, housing, and land use adaptation coordination, and contribute to shifts in land use towards sustainability, equity, contribution to the state's greenhouse gases, GHG emission reduction targets, connectivity, and increased active transportation ridership. The overarching goal of this grant program is to support planning actions at local and regional levels that advance climate change adaptation efforts on the transportation system, especially efforts that serve the communities most vulnerable to climate change impacts. And on April 25th, 2024, staff released the Bell Gardens Climate Action Plan request for proposal. Out of the 4 proposals received, Blue Strike Environmental Incorporated was selected. The Climate Action Plan is a strategic plan to mitigate the efforts of climate change through greenhouse gas emission reductions targeting the construction, energy, transportation, and waste sectors, and to address environmental challenges and opportunities within our community that would apply citywide and is necessary in order to address the impacts of climate change on the city, including increased heat waves, wildfires, flooding, and air pollution, and to enhance the city's sustainability. And most pressingly, would be connected to relevant regional and state planning efforts to ensure alignment with a broader climate resilience goals, including the California Climate Adaptation Planning Guide and Los Angeles County Climate Action Plan. It is the recommendation of planning that Planning Commission receive and file the report provided herein. Thank you so much. This concludes staff's presentation and segues into introducing Blue Strike, the consultancy working closely with staff for a brief presentation that they would like to share with the commission and the public.
Hi, good evening, commissioners, and it's a pleasure for us to be here. My name is Rich Swanson. I am the Director of Climate and Energy, our little division within Blue Strike Environmental, and I am joined by my associate, Anna Bugankova. So it's really been our pleasure and our privilege to work with Mona, Adrian, and other staff here in the city of Bell Gardens to begin and proceed with assembling the city's climate action plan. So we're very excited to be here tonight with you all and have the opportunity to give you this update on where we are so far. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna, who can introduce herself and also initiate the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich, and good evening, commissioners. It's been our pleasure to have been working with the city of Bell Gardens on the Climate Action Plan. And today we're going to share a quick presentation on to provide an update on our progress so far. And can I please get a confirmation that everyone can see my screen?
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, great.
On your screen.
Thank you. Alrighty, so for today's agenda, we are going to do a quick overview of what
Anna, I'm sorry, Anna, we can't see your screen.
Oh, my apologies. Let's see. Okay, are you able to see my screen right now?
Perfect.
Excellent. All right. So yeah, for today's agenda, we are going to do a quick overview of what Climate Action Plan is. We're going to talk about greenhouse gas inventories and tell you more about what greenhouse gases are and why we're conducting those inventories. going to walk you through our progress on community and stakeholder engagement and overview our next steps, such as strategy development and implementation and prioritization. With that, Rich, I'll pass it to you to talk about Climate Action Plan.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Anna. Just in terms of a climate action plan or CAP overview, it's really, as has been stated earlier, a strategic plan to mitigate climate change and its effects within the city of Bell Gardens, an opportunity to enhance quality of life for residents and businesses, and to reduce the city's environmental footprint and resource usage over time. There are a few key deliverables that we are delivering to the city. One is a GHG inventory with some baseline data and forecasts. Another is a robust community engagement that we are about to wrap up in order to develop a sort of a local framework to think about how to address climate change within the city. And then we'll be developing decarbonization strategies for energy, transportation, and waste sectors, along with a comprehensive implementation plan that hopefully will make the plan very actionable, able to sort of walk through it in a step-by-step fashion. Just very briefly, our plan timeline, we kicked off last August at the end of the month. We were working mostly in the fall on data collection and some analytics. In January, we began our community outreach and engagement, which, as I mentioned, we're sort of wrapping up now. We'll dive into the draft of goals and strategies, and then draft and finish up the final climate action plan for presentation to you all at the beginning of August this summer. Just to orient you very briefly to our approach, we sort of view this particular engagement with Bell Gardens in 3 phases. The first was a baseline assessment. We took a look at a lot of data, all the great plans and things that you're already doing in this category there in the city, and we created a baseline of not only of emissions, but also of activities there in the city. Then we started reaching out to various stakeholders, aspects of your community the following months. And then the third element is really to put those strategies that have boiled up, sort of bubbled up from the engagement portion, coming from best practices, and also that are included already in your plan so that we can create nice synergy with your existing city plans. Those will form the strategies and all be entered into our final documentation. And I wanted to point out here that our framework that has emerged, you can see across the top here of this diagram, we are categorizing our various strategies within these buckets, these 5 buckets. So you can see buildings and energy, transportation and mobility, resource conservation, something we call green community, and then resilience and adaptation to a changing world as we see it. And then our various strategies, which these are not necessarily the ones that will be in the CAP, these are just examples, but those will all fall into those buckets, sort of like chapters in a particular report or action items under these various sectors of your community. And I wanted to give you just a little bit of initial results from our baseline discovery. You can see here 2 emission inventories. The panel on the left shows just municipal operations inventories, and there you can see there's some interesting trends. Most of those emissions come from the vehicle fleet, but a fairly large percentage, about 21%, also come from buildings and facilities. And all of it together totals up to about 1,500 metric tons of CO2 equivalents, is what that MTCO2E means up there at the top. Then if we expand that all the way to the entire city, you can see that from the entire city, That is about 120,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalents that are emerging from the city. Per capita, that's about 3.2 metric tons per year. And once again, unsurprisingly, we see transportation being a big component, along with natural gas and electricity, which is really buildings energy use, once again, occupying a fairly decent percentage as well. And on the next slide, we'll show you just real briefly how that compares both around the world and also in the US. You can see that transportation and mobile services, Bell Gardens is a little bit higher than some of these other benchmarks, particularly in the US very broadly. And that's to be expected. Bell Gardens is a fairly urban place with a lot of big boulevards and people crossing, traffic there in the city. If we drop down to the residential energy sector, just as one other example, you can see that Bell Gardens is about on par with the rest of the country in terms of the percentage of overall emissions. And with that, I think I will turn it back over to Anna to talk a little bit about our engagement efforts in your city.
Thank you, Rich. So yeah, as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, that our project is separated in multiple stages, and one of the stages is community and stakeholder engagement. And on the slide, you can see the overview of activities that we've already done or planning to do. Specifically, interesting things to highlight. We ran a community survey both in English and Spanish and received over 100 responses combined. We held multiple focus groups with your department heads and deputies, an environmental justice committee, as well as 2 groups that were held pretty recently with your housing authority, talking to landlords in the city of Bell Gardens, and within your business community. And essentially, the goal for these focus groups was to understand what are the biggest pain points, what were the best practices, and understand how we can implement it into the climate action plan. Rich and I also visited the city of Bell Gardens at the end of January and held an in-person public meeting within the community, and also participated in the yard sale, as well as held the virtual public meeting in the following weeks. And what is yet coming is a few meetings with our steering committee. It's a group of advisors for this project, and also a few meetings like this planned with the Planning Commission. So, and again, as we already mentioned, how the project progresses overall is we're taking these greenhouse gas emission inventories and policies that we reviewed, combining it with our stakeholder and community engagement feedback, and essentially identifying what are the biggest sources of emissions, what are the biggest pain points, what are the best practices, and taking that information to the next stage of strategy development. Once we finalize the strategies, we're moving on to the implementation plan and finalizing the final climate action plan. And in the next few slides, we're going to give you an overview of what these strategies and implementation plan might look like for the city of Bell Gardens. And I want to highlight here that this is not a strategy that is specific to Bell Gardens. This is just a sample to show you what our next steps in the projects are going in this project are going to look like. And so, for example, here you can see a specific strategy dedicated to municipal operations, specifically to transportation. We typically identify a high-level strategy. We identify benefits, co-benefits associated with this strategy, and more detailed action steps that we would need to take to achieve this strategy. And as you can see also on the slide, you can also see priority score, which we'll talk about in a second, and what it means in the planning process. So in the slide, you can see a prioritization matrix. And what we typically do is once the strategies are finalized, we look at each strategy and compare it to different metrics such as greenhouse gas reduction potential, quality of life improvement, any efficiency. And you can see some of the some of the metrics that we're looking at the top of the table. And again, this is custom. This is just an example again to show you what the prioritization process would entail for strategies for this climate action plan. And once we rate all these strategies based on metrics that are important to us, we will get priority scores that you can see on the right. And what those priority scores will essentially mean is how we're going to prioritize these strategies and how we're going to structure the plan and implement the timeline that is associated with each strategy and associated priority score. Here you can also see, again, an example of what the implementation plan might look like. So here on the left, you can see a strategy. Again, this is not specific to Bell Gardens. This is just an example. And what we typically include in our implementation planning is assigning stakeholders that are responsible for implementing the strategy. So for example, you can see here a lead department or lead departments. We typically provide a cost estimate in terms of resources that will be required to implement the strategy. We also provide information on where those cost assumptions are coming from, as well as implementation years. You can see here, we typically provide a range since most of these projects take multiple years to implement. And on the right side, you can see possible funding sources. And what we typically do with all of our strategies that we're proposing, we want to make sure that they're actionable and implementable, which is why we pay so much attention to the implementation plan and identify stakeholders, identify costs, identify implementation timelines, and also funding sources or combination of funding sources that could be used to support this particular strategy. And again, on the right side, this is an example. This may not be just an extensive list, but this is something that we typically provide as a part of the plan and as a part of the implementation roadmap. And as next steps in the project, we will continue our stakeholder engagement activities with the steering committee and with the public commission. As the next step for greenhouse gas emission inventories, we'll be forecasting how different policies and action might change, increase or decrease our emission trends. And we will move to the strategy development and implementation stage once we collect all feedback from stakeholders. And that concludes our presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, receive any comments.
Thank you for your presentation. Does any member of the Planning Commission have any questions or comments?
I do. I was wondering, what have been the community outreach methods mentioned previously and will continue as next steps?
Yeah, so for the community outreach, we identified several outlets. One was running a community survey in both English and Spanish. And the survey ran over a month and a half and was promoted by the city through their social media channels, through our engagements with the community during the in-person public meeting and during our virtual public meeting, as well as promoting this survey to the members of the steering committee, which typically involve advisors and heads of various organizations within the city. Again, also mentioned the virtual meetings and public meetings that we conducted with your community. And what we covered during those meetings is essentially providing an update on this climate action plan, covering why climate action planning is important, why the city is doing it, and getting their feedback, understanding their pain points and understanding what the community cares about. And then we collect that feedback and take it to internally and implement it as a part of the climate action plan. We just concluded our community survey as of March 14th, and now at the stage of analyzing the results and finding trends that could be implemented in the plan.
Can you remind me what the medium through which the survey was released on was?
The medium in terms of what channels?
Was it a physical one, as in pen and paper? Was it online survey?
Yeah, thank you for clarification. This was an online survey through our internal platform. And again, the survey was available in both English and Spanish.
Any other questions?
Just a comment. First of all, thank you for this presentation. I know as a data analytics guy myself, I can definitely appreciate the time that goes into a report and giving the presentation after. But just overall, I mean, this is really exciting. The climate action plan, definitely something important, something that would definitely be looking forward to. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question. This is more for my sake. I don't know if others are interested in that, but do you guys rely on like Cal EnviroScreen, the software of it?
I don't believe so. And Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we're using that software for this project.
No, we have access to a lot of different kinds of models, and so we worked with the project team to select the right model for this particular engagement. But we didn't use Cal EnviroScreen for our inventories or forecasts.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation and for the comments and questions, commissioners. May I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation as noted in the staff report?
I motion to approve staff for recommendation.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Planning Secretary, will you please conduct a roll call vote?
Yes.
Apologies. Commissioner Armato? Commissioner Monroy?
Yes.
Commissioner Preciado?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Barrera?
Yes.
Chairperson Ramirez?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Public comment is now open for items not listed on the Planning Commission agenda. Secretary, please announce the instructions for public participation.
The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items not listed on the Planning Commission agenda. Please state your name for the record. Each speaker and written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from the members of the chamber of the public that are physically present in the council chamber. If you haven't done so already, please submit all comment cards now. Chairperson, it looks like there is no one in the council chambers that wants to speak on non-agenda items. I will go ahead and see if there is anyone on the chat line that would like to speak on non-agenda items. If there is anyone on the chat line, go ahead and press *6 to unmute yourself if you would like to speak on non-agenda items. Chairperson, it looks like we do not have anyone on the chat line who wants to speak on non-agenda items. And for the record, no written comments were submitted.
If there's no objection by the Planning Commission, I will close public comment for non-agenda items. We move on to staff's comments.
Can you please state the time of the closing?
It is 6:51. Staff comments?
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, staff, and public. As you may have noticed, there have been some changes to those present this evening. Deputy City Manager and Community Development Director Gustavo Romo and City Planner Stephen Jones are no longer with the City of Bell Gardens. On February 27th of this year, the Bell Gardens Human Resource Division posted the positions of Director and City Planner as open with a closing date of March 27th, followed by a selection process. During this period, the community will continue to be served by Associate Planner Adrian Flores, by myself, Mona Mosayeb, as Acting City Planner, and Mr. John Ramirez as Interim Community Development Director until said positions are filled. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Ramirez to the commission and the public. Mr. Ramirez, if you please.
Thank you, Mona. I appreciate that. Chair, Commissioners, my name's John Ramirez. I'm here for a couple of months filling in between Gus's departure and the arrival of the newly recruited Community Development Director who'll be working with you and the team here to continue the path that the council, you as the commissioners, have implemented through Gus and his team over the last several years. I'm actually retired, semi-retired from CalPERS, which is our city retirement system. I've been a director, amongst other things, over the last 25 years. And most recently, I've served as the community development director at the city of Norwalk. So I'm familiar with the area. I grew up in Santa Fe Springs and Downey. And, it's very familiar being here and being able to be a part of the Bell Gardens family, even if it's just for a little while. And the staff here has been great and very welcoming. The members of the public who've been coming into the counter to get building permits, business licenses, engaged in the rent stabilization ordinance, they've all been wonderful and friendly. And so it's been a really good first week and a half. So if you have any questions tonight or throughout the week, I'm always happy to be available to answer those questions. I can give you my phone number after the meeting, and it's perfectly okay if you see something or if you think of something, you can shoot me a text, give me a call, and I'm happy to try to do what I can to help you out. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
We move, any other staff comments?
No further comments. Thank you.
Perfect. Commissioner comments, any comments at this time?
I did just want to say thank you for joining us here in Bell Gardens, both you and Mona for stepping into the city planner role. We really do appreciate you guys' service.
Any other comments at this time? Yeah. Okay. I do have a comment. I know that as we move forward, with our current roles, there's been a few times where I forget to thank staff or people in presentation. I think it's because I'm reading the script, right? And it's not as organic, but especially with the first item that we discussed, thank you for the clarification, so detailed and really brought a lot of the important items to attention, and I really do appreciate all of your efforts. Any other comments at this time?
Like always, just echoing what everybody's saying, right? So just want to welcome Mr. John Ramirez. Thank you for joining us and stepping up. And also Mona, yourself, thank you for everything you do here. Make everything run smoothly. City attorneys as well and city staff. So thank you all.
Yes, well said. Thank you very much. If there's no objection by the members, I will now adjourn the regular planning commission meeting at 6:56 p.m.